Do 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 do. Turn down this background music just a tiny touch. There we go. Yeah. Time for the last Redline clinic of CouchCon. Good afternoon, everybody. I love art 54321, Mach 1, hello, Dr. Surreal, Kargarad, Rowbritter, Dragonlast. I hope you guys are having a nice weekend. I'm having a busy weekend, but as everyone will be delighted to know, my sore throat is less sore than it was yesterday. So I don't think I'm even going to have to struggle very hard to get through this clinic. It's going to be a walk in the park. It'll be great. Got the Redline Clinic stuff from yesterday, of course, that we knocked out. Talked about these. I think that stream is up in the YouTube live tab on our YouTube channel. I haven't actually checked, but it might be.
I think it's on Twitter.
It's on Twitter. Oh, it might be on Twitter too. Yeah, Twitter's not as good for archiving though, because you have to go and search through like a zillion trillion posts. But anyways, we got a whole new set of stuff to look at today. So let's get right to it. First, I believe this is a Five Nights at Freddy's character. I believe that they have malicious intent based on that smile.
Actually, honey,
the angry eyebrows.
Close. There are boobs.
It's still Five Nights at Freddy's. It's just Five Nights at Freddy's plus boobs. That doesn't mean it's not at the core the Fox pirate character. I know what the heart of the cards tells me. So let's get right into how would we punch this up a little bit if we were gonna do some redline on it. Well, again, this has happened in a couple submissions this year. I like occasionally having a Dutch camera angle. I take that with a grain of salt because I've watched a lot of movies where they're too much Dutch camera angle. Like when it's an entire film, like salt it in just a little bit, not too much, you're gonna ruin the dish. But I like seeing it salted in a little bit on these still illustrations because it just changes it up nicely. So I like the Dutch camera angle. I would actually...
Did you collect everything? Because somebody submitted recently.
Oh, did they submit recently?
Last night.
What I will do then is I'm going to finish what I got here, and then if I've still got Steam, I'll go and look and collect anything that is new from the last time. But for now, it's time to talk about punching up Foxy a little bit. They're looking kind of intimidating, kind of scary, like you're supposed to be afraid of them and their gorgeous nipple-free rack, which of course I am. But I think to accentuate that...
The red line is you add nipples.
The red line is we need to add... Actually, we're on YouTube. We can't. Two kinds of rules here, folks. But what I can do is I can say I would like to accentuate the feeling of physical intimidation by just dropping the camera down a little bit. Because if it looks like the character is towering over us, that increases the physical intimidation factor. And it looks like they're already doing that a little bit. Like you can see this is not totally parallel. These lines go up to a vanishing point up there somewhere. So I would just exaggerate that a little more. Let's go ahead and get this door really angled like that. And then quick trick, I don't have to necessarily go and find the vanishing point up there and successfully, project it all out. What you can do is you can estimate what's halfway between here and here. It's about here. And then what's halfway between here and here? It's about here. Boom, eyeballed. Then you do halfway here to here, eyeballed. And that is a way where you don't have to necessarily have a gigantic, never-ending drawing desk. You can just eyeball perspective points that go off the edge of the page. Is it flawless and perfect? Now, if you're doing like architectural renderings, it's probably not going to be good enough. You got to get like some real deal stuff happening. But for the purposes of like a cool, fun, Foxy, I forget what the character's name even is. Their name really is Foxy? Mm-hmm. That's convenient. Thank you, Scott Cawthon, for making your characters' names easy to remember. But for the purposes of drawing like a double D Foxy leering at you from a doorway, this perspective approach I think is perfectly suitable. So the next step, I think, is we want to go ahead and make the perspective apply not just to the doorway, but to the figure. Because you can see, I would say that's maybe the one weakness of this initial character drawing, is that we have the door perspective going, but the perspective doesn't really apply to the character as much, and that's where the strength will really come in, is if it applies to the character. So let's just roughly get this here. And you know what? He's leering, so I'm going to give the head a little bit of a tilt. He, she. Listen, folks, we're dealing with what we're dealing with. So they're leering. There's a little bit of a head tilt here. And then the shoulders, I like the shoulders being kind of up like Foxy is like hanging from the door frame as a support point. I think that's like a cool idea, and that's, you know, kudos to the original artist for getting that sort of concept laid out nicely, very clearly. Good silhouette in the original art too, by the way. Let's put the patch here so you know it's Foxy. And they're like, haha, I'm Foxy. Although notice their hook hand is looking pretty good. This is the best condition I've ever seen their hook hand in, so Foxy, I don't know what you've been doing, if it's lotions maybe, but good on you. But then here's where the fun begins. We got the head up here, and we want to make the torso getting a little bigger in space as it comes closer to you.
She seems lopsided. Is that on purpose?
Lopsided? Yeah, I'm having the head tilt a little bit off center. So as the torso comes closer to you in space, things get bigger. That applies to everything on the torso. Ha ha ha. And then as the hips come in, I'm also putting just a little bit of a subtle action line in the body. I just can't help it. It's like instinctive now. So that's we've discussed some action lines a lot on yesterday's stream. But as everything gets closer, action lines are not. That perspective is helping to guide the foreshortening and like size difference of items. And we'll go ahead and like have the legs be spread a little bit more dramatically. Just helps accentuate that idea all the more. And then of course you got hands up here, there's fingers. We're not really going to take the time to draw the fingers though, because we're mainly focusing on the big picture character posing and body positioning.
They want to know how your voice is doing.
Oh, they want to know how my voice is doing? They care about me, they really do. I would say I'm at a 73% today. Earlier in the weekend, I was at maybe 22%, not doing too hot. It was difficult to continue talking. So it's still not perfect. I can feel a little bit of a scritchy scratch in there, but way, way better than when we started. So I can stream, and I don't have to be constantly gobbling down lozenges. All right, so this is just pumping up the perspective. Oops, wrong layer. Pumped up the perspective on the shot to really accentuate sort of like the psychological intimidation factor. So we have the original, still looking pretty good leer, a little bit intimidating, especially, I don't know why Foxy has pants but no shirt, but I would be scared if I was here. I would be headed the other direction. But just, again, like exaggerating the perspective and then making sure that the figure's body is also in that perspective. I think that's where we get the real intimidating Foxy situation.
You gotta drink something for that throat.
Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I planned ahead. Every detail, including having delicious iced coffee with almond milk. Mm-hmm. Ooh, we got a comic submission. And now for something completely different. Comic submission, I believe this was drawn by the owner of the Juzo character, because there's Juzo with his box. Yeah, Corbin, thank you. Alright, I like some of the stuff going on in this comic already, so let's talk about it. I like how the panel borders aren't necessarily just a series of, like, you know, like square, square, square. The panels are actually, we got sort of like a nice rough thing going, a little bit of a vignette here. This is like a nice organic shape. So already these panels are a lot more interesting than your average newspaper style comic. I'm going to show you one brief trick that you can sometimes do. This is just like a quick little note. Sometimes if you've got like some white space, some page white space, and then word balloons on a separate panel that's transitioning into the white space, you can actually go in and, assuming my brush is working, am I on like it's on a multiply mode, there we go. That would explain it. You can actually go in and you can take the color white and you can just white out that balloon border, and then it sort of helps open up the composition even more, because you can still tell who's speaking because the balloon is mostly in this first panel, the arrow's going right to the speaker, but then since it's open over here, it just kind of helps things like flow and really makes the composition breathe nicely. You could potentially even do it with this balloon because it's overlapping the character's wing so much. I was about to say you can't really do it with word balloons, they're just completely in the white space of the page. But yeah, even this, if you really wanted to, you could. And then obviously this balloon might be a bad idea, because as soon as you do it on this balloon, you don't know who's talking anymore, so you need to have that attribution tail remain in place. So I would say you don't necessarily want to slap this on every single word balloon, but
This is really helpful to a lot of people.
oh, cool! I'm glad it's helpful. But that's just a nice little cute technique you can use sometimes with word balloons that are on top of a page space that is the same color as the word balloon itself. All right.
It's a sketch of the month idea.
Oh, Liz is over there looking at sketch of the month ideas brought to us via. It's like adult Nama and Bill as
Nama Bill.
yeah, role reversal.
Oh dear.
That's adorable and funny. But I'm trying to run a Redlining clinic. You don't distract me. See, I was able to do goofy voice. Yesterday, I would have been dead. They would have been peeling my body off the concrete if I tried to do even partially
Now
goofy
you're only
voice.
60%.
Mhm.
Waste you down.
Other things I like about this composition. I like the fact that we start with some nice silhouettes. Like, this is like silhouettes, so we get the characters, we get a little bit of space and context, but there's not too much detail. Then we've got like a nice mid shot. You know, bottom of the legs, not bottom, like mid leg up. So we get sort of like mid shot of the characters. Then we have a close up right here. And then we get a nice establishing shot where the characters are really small in there and we get a lot more of the setting. And this is something that I like to see a lot on comic pages. I mean, sometimes there is a reason to have everything close up or everything be like a super far away shot. But generally speaking, you want to have kind of a pleasant mix. Close up here, mid shot, establishing shot, and that gives a little bit of pleasant variation on the page. So you're not just looking at, especially if you have like a book and it's page after page after page, if every single character is just mid shot, mid shot, mid shot, mid shot, mid shot, it can get like pretty visually dull after a while. So something like this changes it up nicely. So what would I redline if I was gonna change this? If I was gonna change things around? If I was gonna okay, I'll stop rotating. I think I'm gonna focus a little more on the backgrounds here, since I've been focusing a lot on the characters and other things.
Do the whole thing upside down, please.
Do the whole. I was making electric guitar sounds as I was doing that, Liz. Yeah.
Let me ask for that.
Actually, I don't even really use my vocal cords for that. I should just completely communicate in an electric guitar. Yeah.
Will be electric guitar.
So I think what I would recommend on this is, here's an example of a background that is also using perspective really nicely. So you got background, you got details, ice coming off of it, ropes, going to a very clear vanishing point, nice depth established. So what would I do differently? And this is an example where I would, and you can actually look at some of our orphanage shots. I would say this is great, but I would start to freehand over this construction that's been built. So I like, when I'm doing like the blue line sketch, for example, I'll typically just like sketch out the direction of the docks. I'll make the pylons perfectly vertical. But then when I start to go in and actually pencil it, I won't make it a perfect vertical. I'm going to start to try to feel the wood grain in there. I'm trying to feel like, okay, here's like a big log. It's a little bit ripply here. Maybe there's like some part where it bulges out. There's a little bit more pressure. Let's put some wood grain, a little bit of a whirl here. And of course you can have like the some cross hatching and just stuff like that. And granted, this does eat up a lot of time. It takes a lot of drawing time, but it is
You and your wood grain.
yeah, me and my wood grain. But I think that's something that helps the backgrounds come even more successfully to life. Because when everything is exactly linear and going perfectly to a vanishing point, it starts to feel almost like everything is made out of like steel. It's very samey, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you can start to add like some a little bit of irregularity, especially like some settings you actually don't want it to be irregular, like if it is like a totally steel, ship's bridge or something like that.
Could you talk about the lines on the wheel there? It looks like it's trying to be a perspective, but with the circle tool that was used, it's not really.
Oh, you want me to talk about the water wheel design?
Maybe how to help the water wheel be a circle in perspective, because I see a line down there that doesn't match the rest of that. Maybe it's just me.
Oh yeah, well, circles in perspective are one of the toughest things to do, so I'll actually talk a little bit about that on the side. Making things a little bit imperfect. Again, sometimes you have like a totally antiseptic, sterile, rigid setting, like the inside of a UFO, maybe that has no detail, maybe everything is perfectly solid, all the shapes are ideal. But especially in a setting like Grun's Orphanage, you want it to feel a little run down, a little crappy. So like maybe even like these boards here, are sagging in between the pylons. So we have the perfect perspective underneath. Like typically for me, that's on my blue line sketch layer. So we can see where the lines are supposed to go. Then we see where the lines actually go, and we just let the docks kind of have a little bit of sagginess to them, kind of have a little bit of shoddiness to the construction. Like this cross beam has some pressure on it, so that piece of wood, it's been there for a long time. It's going to be a little warped. I will say I like the detail of how the ropes are looping at different levels around this pylon. That's already a good detail. Like that's done right. Because if the ropes on these docks are just like, that starts to look a little bit like ropes don't really loop on stuff that perfectly unless it's inside of a UFO, the rigging inside a UFO. But on the docks here, so having like different curves for those ropes coming down, that's a great detail. It's done really well.
You just drew ropes. I didn't know you had plans for them.
Well, I mean, I do just draw ropes, but I guess I've drawn so many ropes around dock pylons that I just sort of make them tilty by default now. It's ingrained in me. I've trained myself too many times on drawing ropes around dock pylons in that way. But so that would be my suggestion for taking like the drafting to the next level on some of these types of settings, is just add a little bit of once you get perfect perspective, then go in and just add a little bit of imperfection.
Add some character.
Yeah, a little bit of imperfection. And honestly, I know it takes trust me, I know it takes a lot more work. But having some hand dropped texture on some of these woods and boards, and you don't even necessarily have to put the same amount of texture everywhere. Like if you put all the detail texture on this board and you put the exact same amount on this pylon with the same line weight, that might start to make things look a little too flat. But when there's things especially that are closer up, if you just give those close-up areas like a little more love, a little more cross-hatching and texture and wood grain or whatever, then it starts to actually make it feel closer. And then when you make the things in the background a little more light, a little more impressionistic, that's also actually feeding into and helping enhance the feeling of perspective and distance and space in your image. Let's see. And then Liz was talking about circles in perspective, and that's actually difficult. Let me go to another layer. I'm going to talk a little bit just about circles in perspective in general here. And then we'll see about Grun's water wheel. Like, how would I do it differently? How would I redline it? So, circles. In perspective, they are hard. So first, before you can draw a circle in perspective, learn how to draw a circle not in perspective. Now you might say, I can draw a circle. Yeah, but if you can draw a circle in a square, it's going to be easier to then draw a circle in perspective, because you know how to draw a square in perspective. So drawing a circle, get a box, divide it with a diagonal like this. And then these diagonal parts here, what you want to do is you want to put a little notch on them at the 1/3 and the 2/3 marks, roughly. And I know this isn't perfect. We're just freehanding here to show you the general gist of it. So basically at the 1/3 and the 2/3 level. And then for the circle itself, let's turn up this a little bit. For the circle itself, they hit at the top, they hit at the sides, the bottom of course, and then on the diagonals, they typically hit just past that 2/3 mark. And so that gives you a framework where it's relatively easy then to be like, okay, a circle hits there, kind of hits there, kind of hits there. And you can see I'm not drawing like a perfect circle because this whole square is free-handed. But, so you sort of fudge it, get it pretty close. And it's like, yeah, okay, that's looking pretty good. There's a circle. So obviously, if you want to draw a circle in perspective, what you do is you draw a square in perspective. And everyone knows how to do that, right? Let's say there's a vanishing point over here. Well, that's where the perspective is going on this square. In fact, let's say there's even like a vanishing point up here. We got 2-point perspective going on for extra complications. Whoa. So this is like a square that's coming at you in 2-point perspective. Pretty extreme. So then you can just do the same basic thing. You put your little subdivisions in that square. Put your diagonals in there. You eyeball 1/3 and 2/3, 1/3 and 2/3, like that. And then, for your circle, you go ahead and you try to hit, let's turn that down actually a little bit. Try to hit right there, and right there, and right here, and right here. And you sort of go just outside the 2/3 mark on the diagonals. And again, you kind of eyeball it. Like, I'll just hit right on the 2/3 mark there.
Well, I took a perspective class, and that's what I learned with circles, is that you really budget up the whole time at baking it.
Yeah. So you can sit there with a ruler, and you can exactly measure the 1/3 and the 2/3 mark, and so you can actually do this precisely with total geometric accuracy and precision. But I find even just knowing to freehand it in this manner makes it a lot easier for me. So that is how you draw a circle in perspective. So let's return to Grun's orphanage. And he's got that big water wheel there. So I guess the only thing I'd really do differently about this is I think that's even a good substructure for the water wheel. I think I would just go ahead and make it like a little bit thicker. So because right now it sort of looks like it's, the thickness of a piece of paper, so I would actually give it some cross-sectional area. A little bit like that, and then, then the horizontal area is going back towards that vanishing point. And putting some hatching, some cross-hatching on surfaces can sort of help indicate which direction it's faced. Like these rim things here, since this focus is facing us, I can kind of add some cross-hatching that indicates it's flat to us and just makes it look a little bit more easy to tell which way it's pointed. And on the other hand, we got this vanishing point over here. So if there's a surface of this wheel that's facing away from us, sort of hanging a hat on that vanishing point and putting some hatches.
There's a lot going on Redline. It's because you're doing background.
Yeah, it's because I'm doing some
And
backgrounds.
you've been here before.
I know all about this orphanage.
You live here.
What we're doing is we're working with backgrounds, and I don't think I'm like most people, but based on the way I see a lot of other artists draw, I think they get into backgrounds, and it's like there are no characters, no faces, no boobs. I don't want to do this.
Background is character.
This is not fun, but this is the eating your vegetables part of being an artist, especially if you want to do any art that involves like settings and world building and like environments. So I know this is not as fun as this. It's not as fun as Foxy leering at you in a doorway. But learning how to do just meat and potato stuff, drawing a square, drawing a circle in a square, drawing perspective, adding a little roughness and imperfection to your settings and perspective, stuff like that will really help things come to life in an incredible way.
Background's overrated, changed my mind. You are right now.
Background's overrated, changed my mind. I have failed. I've failed in my proselytization of backgrounds. Well, then you're going to love this next red line. What are you laughing at? What's wrong with
I
you?
did not see that coming.
I find
I'm
some...
sorry, we thought we were just going to live in the orphanage for a day.
Liz, I find something positive to say about every piece because everyone is starting at the level that they're at.
I'm laughing about your orphanage.
Okay, good. That's what you're laughing
And
about.
I'm laughing at you.
You better behave yourself.
I'm laughing at you. Hey, there we go. Anyway, I think the artist is here, but
Laughing at me.
I'm laughing at you.
That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how someone could laugh at me. But anyways, talking about perspective and things that people are doing right, let's look at some basic things that are already good with this. We do have successful overlap and some cartooning that shows you where things are at. This ear is overlapping on the top of the head, so we know this ear is the one that's closest to us. This ear is the one that's furthest away because the head is overlapping the ear. And we got this cool mohawk sort of thing that is... Also, let me just point out, big danger of a tangency right here. A tangency is when you get like, say you have a head and an ear overlapping, and then like a mohawk coming up, coming around, everything's good. But a tangency is when you get like beep, beep, like all the lines meeting at like one point. Because that's sort of the opposite of overlap is having like a tangency. Probably the best illustration of that I've ever drawn. But anyway, so for example, right here, I would make sure to like maybe even nudge this mohawk forward just a bit so we have some nice overlap in this area and we don't run the risk of having a little bit of a tangency there.
I think,
Yeah?
you know how we do the eye line, where it's, you add the line of eye placement, just so you can have a perspective circular look?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that the mouth line lines up with the eye.
Oh, you're talking about like making the same sort of cross sections on
Yes,
the head shape.
cross-section on the head shape.
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Yeah,
Getting some good tips from Liz.
I think that's what we need.
So I'm pointing out there's already good overlap on this, so something has already been done right. And then Liz has pointed out, I think she's observing that the eye line here, if you look at sort of the level of the eyes and then the corners of the mouth, they don't quite match up. So something that you can do to correct for that is just get a basic construction drawing underneath the whole thing. And that's usually how I always start things, is with just a basic sphere. And then where I go from there, I've got a basic sphere. Got like a nice little dividing line. And then the eyes, based on, this way you can sort of like have a tilt to the head that's very easy. Because, you know, a head is complicated. There's like eye sockets and nose and ears and all kinds of stuff. But like a basketball, that's pretty easy. You can like point that thing wherever you want. So just having a basic sphere with like a cross going through it, that's like the easy basic way to have like head construction. And then of course, once you're doing that, then it's easy to sort of add secondary lines to it like this. So if you're wondering like, well, what would be the angle of like say the mouth area or the eyebrow area or the nose or whatever, you can go ahead and add some extra construction lines. And just doing this to me helps make sure that there is a feel for the dimensionality of the underlying object. Yeah. And once you have like a feel for the underlying like shape, it gets a lot easier to then start placing features on top. So away we go, placing features on top.
I thought the drawing video you did years ago to try to draw a head this was the best way to pull off.
Oh, cool. Well, again, there's stuff on this that is going right. So I hope that I'm able to articulate that, like...
I like the ball with the cross.
Yeah, the ball with the cross. I use the ball with the cross all the time.
I leave the lines on all the time, too.
Now, I've sort of refined my ball with a cross technique by doing it, you know, a zillion times with Dreamkeepers.
Oh, we need a better name.
We need a better name than balls?
Crossballs?
Crossballs? We need a better name than crossballs? Well, someone else will brand it. I'll just talk about what I'm doing for now. But what I do is, usually I have this center line come down, and then where it meets the eyes, typically I have a nose bridge coming forward. So I actually go ahead and have a line coming off like this. And if it's like a fox or something, it might come way out here. If it's something a little bit more feline, like say like a Lilith nose, it might come out to about there. And at that point, it's like, well, if the eyes are going around here, and this is coming out there, then you can sort of add this this slice. And this lets you start kind of sculpting out the shape of the head. Like I'm adding like little cheek tufts here because I always do that on my feline characters. But this character actually, it looks like they have rounded cheeks. So I'm gotta pump the brakes a little and have the cheeks be rounded. And then you can see there's gonna be the nose here, and it comes back down around to the sphere. A lot of times I start off with the sphere, but I wind up having the features actually condensed a little more towards the bottom of it. And I think that's just the neoteny coming in. Neoteny is the phenomenon in nature where things with larger eyes and differently proportioned facial features look cuter, because that's sort of the facial features of young animals. So it's programmed in our DNA to find those things like cute and appealing. Then you can have this smile come here. And again, like having this like little green line underneath there. It's not that I always draw all of these cross sections on every sphere, but I've done it so many times in practice and so many times like over the years that at this point it's just sort of like in my head. Like it's at the level where I don't always have to draw it, but I still usually have a lot of these like sketchy construction lines. If you look closely, they'll be like inherent in the piece. And then once you have your basic shapes, your basic positions of features, it's a lot easier to start adding like the patches onto things, sort of draping the decoration on. Got like an eye shape.
Oh, she's a skunk. She has rounded cheeks like a squirrel.
Oh, cool. Skunk with rounded cheeks like a squirrel.
And a mohawk. Fin there.
Yep. And then I do like skunks with mohawks, I think are underrated and we need more of them. And this is a good place to start. And then again, once you get all the features done, like the eyes, the nose, the mouth, that's really the stuff too that we are trained to recognize a lot more immediately. So if you get the proportions wrong on the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the face region, usually that's the most high attention area of a character, and so you gotta like try to get those pretty close if you can, because people's brains will immediately be like, oh, that's not right, because we see so many faces all the time. We're programmed to look at faces and look at the proportions. But something like feline ears, fortunately, I mean, we see them, we know what they look like, but they're not like important to human development in a social manner, so you can kind of like sketch the ears in a little more loosely, and the level of precision that you need on facial features, you don't need that level of precision necessarily on the ears, so you got a little bit of breathing room. Once you get the face really working for you, then the other features, the ears, cool mohawks. I really like the mohawk, actually. That stuff gets a little bit easier to place in after the fact. So yeah, here we have just a little bit of a modification. I made the character look in a different direction.
He thinks you're making her so much cooler, and he's tearing up over here.
Oh, well, don't tear up. You provided a good design substrate,
Make sure you have the layers saved so they can access this. And
oh yeah, I'm gonna give the high-res backers like the whole shebang. But that's why like, it seems really basic and fundamental when you tell people, hey, go into a sketchbook and draw a sphere and put a cross on it. Draw ball crosses all day. You tell people that, and people are like, well, that's not fun. That's not exciting.
No, actually.
But if you draw enough balls, yes, Liz?
I love cutting you off. You know what? I'm looking at your circle sphere. But what you didn't do was you didn't do the extra line going down here to make sure you get the eye placement right. You mix those.
Oh, the eye placement?
You can do the extra ones going down.
Usually I don't do those.
You don't need them, but if you need extra help, they go.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about like using the ball cross technique, shut up, is if you need more dividing lines, it's pretty easy just to put more dividing lines on this as much as you want.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's infinite lines to choose from.
Yeah, so if you're like, I need a little more precision, I need to map things out a little more precisely because I don't quite have the feel for it yet, you can add enough cross sections on here, more latitude and longitude lines until so if you have your whole face kind of like gridded out in terms of like, here's the proportions that I want, like the eyes are going to be in this quadrant, you know, nose is going to be in this quadrant. If you just like go ahead and like map that onto the sphere where you want it to be, it's going to be it's going to actually help make sure that everything is lined up the way you want it to be. Now I will say, as much as I advocate using balls, shut up Liz, I have actually modified my shape so that it's, because I found myself doing perfect spheres a lot, and every time I do a perfect sphere with the eyes right down the middle, yeah, well, Mace is more of a square base. Every time I find myself doing a perfect sphere, usually I wind up having the eyes be like lower down. So I've just modified it to the point where it's a little bit more of like a specialized, like almost like the top of it is like a sphere, but it's like sort of sitting on almost like a wedge-shaped base. So that's sort of turned into my default circle shape. But I think to get to like weird, deformed circle shapes, you want to start like being really confident just drawing like three-dimensional spheres first.
They're quoting you, pay attention to the ball.
They're quoting me, pay attention.
Anyway, her
Yeah.
name is Melody Powers. She's a hard rock singer with her own band.
Oh, nice.
She's basically the furry equivalent of the lead singer of the Pretty Reckless. You know, I like furry bands. We need more of those.
Yeah. Let me just add her name on here.
Yeah, it's Melody Powers.
Yeah, cool. Reminds me of GarageBand. We got to get that Kickstarter launched pretty soon.
Yeah, they have this kind of too. Anyway.
All right, next one.
Now, this, let me tell you about this one actually.
Oh, you have insider info on this.
From what I saw or what I heard, originally they took clips of in indigo drawings you did,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of like collaged it together, and then I think they went over lines to make it look like this.
Oh, nice.
So it's kind of, I think that's what I saw or what I heard. I could be
So
wrong.
Liz is, like, she could be wrong, she's saying, but she thinks that this is actually kind of like built from various inspirations that I drew at various points in time, like different.
I recognize those artists.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, I feel like this leg looks really familiar.
Yeah, I know.
I was about to compliment and be like, "You're doing a good job. That's just like I would do it." And then it's like, "Oh, I think I might have actually done this leg and this foot." I recognize like the stupid sketchy pencil lines that I insist on putting in everything.
So yeah, they actually collaged this pose together from a bunch of other ones he did.
Nice. So this is a pose that is collaged together, and so I'm going to go ahead and redline my own work.
I'm not clear, but it might actually be a program that did this. They say GIMP job.
Either way, I'm going to have to be like,
Challenger.
who's the guy that originally drew this? What an idiot. I'll tell you how to do it better. Wait, it was me? Oh, I've been caught. So I would say I don't really...
You played yourself.
I played myself, yeah. So this is maybe a good opportunity to draw right on the paper texture layer. Great job, David. But this is maybe a good opportunity to sort of talk about just overall anatomical proportions. Because the different parts, I think, are actually working relatively well. So how can we try to get them working even better as a cohesive unit together? Well, like I said, I think the lower body is working okay. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, like it's perfect. Like I'm sure there's stuff that we could improve on with this. I am not the best artist in the world, but
I'm going for a red light poster for the club.
oh, a red light poster, that's cool. But so I think, what would I notate on this? I would probably, if I was going to try to like revamp this drawing from scratch, I'd put a little more tilt in this torso, because it looks like she's sort of reaching back to grip this pole behind her. So I'd actually tilt the torso a little more back, and I'd try to give her arms a little bit more of like a reach towards that. Because typically if there's a pole behind you, I'm actually doing the motion now myself, which this is a good way to do references. If you're not sure how a pose works, actually I'm sitting in a chair, but you can even get up and try the move out yourself. So I'm just reaching behind my head, like what if I was trying to reach like a pole behind me? David the stripper is doing an amazing show, and I'm finding I have to either bend my elbows or I have to reach like really far up, and if I was going to reach really far up, my arms don't go back that much, so I would have to basically pivot my entire rib cage to shoot back that direction. Now granted, I'm not the most flexible dancer in this universe, but I'm just telling you, if David was... that's sort of a way that you can try to get a handle on poses at times. And I mean, you might be looking at the original drawing here and be like, that's not how you first drew it, David. You're wrong. It's like, yeah, I've made bad drawings before. Trust me.
Oh, they love a how-to book from us.
A how-to book? A how-to book might be really fun sometime. But I need to knock out some stuff on my plate first.
Granny Moss thinks it needs more rib cage.
We need more rib cage. Actually, it doesn't hurt to define the rib cage a little bit more. Especially because I'm sort of thinking of this as an undersketch, and you don't even need to include all these details in the final lines and stuff.
What you also have to note is that when the arms go up, the whole torso stretches, and then the boobs stretch out too, so they're not going to be as,
Yeah. That is the thing, too. Like Liz has pointed out, when you have like a full torso stretch like this, it's stretching... Think about if you have like just a box of stuff, bloop, bloop, bloop. If you then like tilt the box like this... bloop, 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 bloop. Like, one side is going to be getting stretched out, and then the other side is basically getting, like, scrunched in. So things on the side that is stretching out, especially because skin, tissue, all this stuff is pretty flexible, it's going to mean that the breasts actually extend up and down a little bit as well. So they're not going to be necessarily, like, the same configuration. It's based on how the character's torso is moving around. It's going to sort of change how things interact. So let's put the hands back here. Yeah, and it's going to be pinkies at the top, thumbs at the bottom. I'm just doing like very, very gestural stuff. And again, like if I was taking this to like a finished polished drawing, there'd be like probably more detail on like the fingers. So it doesn't just look like some sort of a spaghetti claw hovering there.
Okay, you know what? They're saying it would be really helpful if you did a how-to on hair drawing tutorials. Could you kind of go in and do some hair stuff here?
Oh, hair drawing tutorials.
So if you could actually play with the hair more.
Sure. And I'm just doing like a bit of a mess on the hair right now, but I'll talk a little bit more about hair specifically in a second here. Also, for clarity, just at the moment, I'll just leave off her ears briefly. So I'm just looking at mainly the overall pose of the body. Here's the stripper pole. The hands are so far apart, it's a huge stripper pole. I don't know what to say.
Hey, you can simplify your drawing by not drawing clothing.
You can simplify your drawing by not drawing at all.
No, but not drawing clothing goes faster too. You get more audience.
That's true. Yeah, for a quick tip on easy growth, ditch that clunky clothing.
Folds. Everyone
Yeah.
has folds.
And then one note I would have is I would try to like smooth out if there's a tail that's like looping and curving around. Try to avoid like any, because if there's like a change in direction that's actually like an angle, it actually looks like the tail got broken or something. It looks painful. So try to keep things, even if it's like a tighter curve, just try to keep it nice and curved and loose. So I think that is probably how I would try to tweak this pose, like just overall if I was doing this from the ground up. And now let's talk a little bit about drawing hair. Because hair is one of those things where it's tricky to draw, and especially if you look at cartoon stylizations of hair, it doesn't really look like real hair at all. Like real hair, it's like there's each individual hair is an individual hair. So it's like if you draw that, it just looks like a mess of lines. So I would say probably the best advice on hair, I forget if this was from Glenn Cook specifically, or Glenn Keane, I'm sorry, Glenn Keane specifically. Who's Glenn Cook?
Glenn Cook is an author that you read.
Ah, that's right.
You're reading it outside on the porch.
Well, Glenn Cook is a really good author, and Glenn Keane is a really good artist, so maybe people with the name of Glenn watch him. But general Disney advice, I think, I don't know if it was Glenn Keane, but is to don't think of the hair as a bunch of individual hairs. Instead, think of the hair as like sort of like a big solid flowing mass. Like we'll get some Ariel the Little Mermaid hair. We got the bangs up here. And then if we have like more hair coming at the top of the head, just think of it as like whoosh, sort of a big flowing mass like this. And we can sort of draw a line here indicating, well, that's sort of the outside of the hair. And then we'll just, I'll just scribble a little bit in here so we can sort of see like, well, this is like the inside of the hair. Almost like we're drawing like a big giant like slug or something. Where it's like, well, what's the top of the slug and what's the bottom of the slug? So this is just, it almost looks like a big weird shape like this if you think about it. Where there's like, part of it is a top or an outside, and part of it is a bottom or an inside. And that's like really primitive, but you see, like that is one of the things where, especially if you're animating it, you need to have a handle on the shape. And with hair, again, you're not so much drawing individual hairs.
Sad now. What did you do?
The face looks sad? I don't know. It's depressed. But so you're not so much drawing individual hairs as you're drawing sort of like the overall sense of what the mass and the gravity is. So you want to get a sense of like the weight of the hair. That's why you can see in this one, even though it's one simple shape, when it's one simple shape, you sort of know like, okay, well, it's a flexible shape. So if it's hanging down from a single point like this, let's say this is like sort of like a big jelly-filled bag. If it's totally parallel all the way down, it looks too rigid. So what you do instead is you actually say, no, most of the jelly would be in the bottom of the bag. And then it would come up a little bit, and then it would be like this at the top of the bag. So just already thinking of it as like a singular mass helps you get these sort of appealing curves in the hair. And that's where you get a sense of the gravity and the weight and a little bit of the energy flowing through the hair. And then once you have that, it's pretty easy to go through and like be like, oh, it doesn't look very hairy. We'll just add like one or two little points like this on there. And then a couple little points in there like that. And then boom.
Okay.
Now it's hair.
I have a neat idea I want you to do.
Oh, what's the neat idea you want?
Take the tail and try to loop it in the viewer's direction instead of perpendicular as we see it here. Like add a little bit of perspective and bring it forward.
Oh, that'd be
Show us
fun.
how to do that.
Sure, how to
This
bring
looks very pin-up. It could be a sticker kind of. Show us a little.
how to bring the tail forward towards the viewers. We're gonna
That's your little perspective.
we're gonna put some perspective on this tail. Sure.
If you can.
Excuse me.
Swallow and talk it.
Shut up, I can do it. I got a coffee.
I got candies. Got candies here. Want candy? Yeah, I got a whole box of candy.
I lasted for an hour yesterday, but I did have the power of lozenges.
You went through 6 of them.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Coffee and candy. Good job.
Alright, now that you have this delicious sound
Oh.
in your ear, let's go ahead and put this tail in perspective. Sorry everyone, I do need some lozenges to get through the day. So same basic principle with hair as with the tail, generally for me. Granted, the tail does have a little more structure than hair because there's literally like, hair doesn't have bones. you give someone a haircut, they don't start screaming and spraying blood at you.
I'm wondering about the tail here. You might, actually.
But that said, it's still basically, we treat the tail generally as like a solid mass of hair, just with a little more rigidity to it, because it does have a rigid structure. So if I was going to have like a solid sort of tail thing swooping around and coming close to the viewer, let's have it first go back here a little bit. And I'm imagining it going back in space. It's overlapping these other things I drew. That's okay. We'll pretend they don't exist. And then I'm imagining the tail coming at you. So even just using little shapes like this, like I'm imagining, you see, it starts small, and then, ooh, we're getting big. So this is just sort of the way I would approach it. And if you want to add like little even like cross things to help show like, well, what direction is it going? If you have contour, like surface contours, it helps to sort of show if the tail's going away from you or not. And then here it starts to show like, oh, well, the tail's coming towards you based on where you put those like little surface contours. So you can exaggerate as the tail is like further back in space. It's going to be a little thinner. And then as it starts coming towards you, it's going to be getting bigger, like this. And that sort of helps accentuate the sense of perspective. And then same principle as with the hair. We have this, we basically have this big jelly sock with a little more structure to it. And then you're like, well, that doesn't look very furry or like a tail. Correct. It looks sort of like, especially based on the color, like let's say this was like a brown tail or something. It'd look like a giant dookie. You don't...
By the way, now they want a wink expression on the face.
A wink expression on the face?
We get a break. Now it's commission, honey.
I think we gotta focus on the tail and get on to the next one. This is...
Customizing her.
My scribbles are so scribbly that I don't think there's gonna be much room for facial improvement.
But what if they drew a foxtail on it?
What if they drew a foxtail on it? I don't have the power to stop you. I could call the police, but I think the police would be like, sir, what exact are you trying to report?
You know, I think it would be a shape issue with the foxtail.
And I'd be like, officer, the indigo has a really long tail, sort of like a lemur or something, but it's not really like anything in nature, and they're drawing a foxtail on her, and that's not canonically accurate, and I made a character sheet, and they're not following the character sheet, and then at that point, I think the police would just, they'd shoot me. They'd be like, we need one less of you in the world. And I'd be like, no!
And it's like, get out.
Yeah, they'd say, get out of the police station. This is the 5th time this week.
They're told Judy to arrest you.
We don't care what other artists are doing, sir, on social media. We don't care what people are doing with your character designs. You keep coming in here, you don't have shoes, you're unkempt, please leave. So this is how I make a tail coming toward you in perspective. Alright.
Which, hey, by the way, if you ever 3D model, that's exactly how we do tails.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, that lozenge helps. Thank you for the idea. Now let's move on to...
Got
Nope, there's nice things to say, Liz, and I'm going to think of them, and I'm going to say them.
No, I'm not. You know what? I think it's a collage.
The first thing I would say is I like platonic solids, and I appreciate that there are 2 of them overlapping in the background there. But the text, I'm assuming the text is backwards on purpose, so I'm not going to criticize that. I think I would just have difficulty critique.
I'm not sure what they're going for.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Like, I don't know really how to critique this because I don't know what the intended effect is. Because I think they're going for something a little bit surreal, a little bit like esoteric, something mysterious, something cryptic.
I think they get a gold star.
Yeah, so if you are going for something cryptic, then there's stuff with this that works with that. This does look like, honestly, this looks like a mystery to unpack. You have like a silhouette, you have a person locked in like not a hypercube, but like some sort of a tesseract, you have backwards text, a moon. So it does look like there's some sort of cryptic meaning here to sort of interpret. But it's so cryptic, I'm not exactly sure what to redline. Because it doesn't look like it's intended to be like a really detailed illustration. I think if I was going to add major advice to this, I would just say, overall in terms of big picture composition, actually this is a great opportunity to talk about basic shape theory and composition.
Yeah.
So right now, what we have are 3 basic focal points. the text, I think, is treated almost as an accent or a texture. So the text it's a visual ingredient, but it's not a main compositional element. Right now we have...
By the way, I was not laughing at this piece, I was laughing at you.
You're laughing at me? You're always laughing at me.
You're the show.
What am I, a clown?
Yeah.
Am I here for your amusement?
Remember,
You say I'm a funny guy?
You show up on time to my party.
I show up on time to your party? I do, don't I? But anyways, let's talk about 2D design. So we have this shape region down here. And I know this sounds like dry, but actually this is very important also for panel composition, comic composition. We got this region of this character up here. We've got this sort of a hypercube shape right here. And we've got this moon right over here. So if we turn this up all the way, what you see are we have some basic shapes. Some basic shapes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I'm going to talk about...
Directing the eye.
Yeah, directing the eye. And
Gosh, you're brilliant.
so when you have a composition right here, and I know this is like, oh, it's cryptic. What are you doing critiquing this? But no, seriously. Even for something that's supposed to be cryptic or difficult to interpret, you probably want to have these compositional things in your head. And again, this is really useful for composing any image. So I'm going to briefly talk about primary, secondary, and accent shapes and the rule of thirds. So you can see here, we're just going to call this, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is a little bit smaller, but the other shapes are about the same size. And this is not a strict, rigid rule, but generally when you're doing compositional stuff, you want to have one shape be the primary shape. So maybe like if you want to emphasize the character up in that corner, you'd go for shape 1. If you want to emphasize like that central geometric thing with the character hovering in the middle, which actually to me that seems the most interesting. So I'd say if I was redoing this, I would have shape number 3 be the big kahuna, and then I'd have shape number 1 back there halfway off the camera, and I would also have that be larger. So we have a primary, a secondary, and then I'd have these smaller shapes be accents.
Hey, could you, do you remember, this is a long time ago, do you remember in art college there was the very first challenge in 2D design, which was you take the 3 rectangles and make it lead the eye?
Mm-hmm.
Can you show them that trick? You take the 3 squares and you lead
Yeah.
the eye with them? Show them that, because that's exactly what I see here.
Actually, Liz is talking about using the compositional shapes to lead the eye.
Yep.
So in fact, I'm going to do that even with this basic compositional space. So I think the primary, I still like having...
They see a clown, it's 2 eyes, I know.
They do see a clown. This is Clown Talk with your host, Chief Clown David Lilly.
I told you you were my birthday clown.
So anyways, let's choose a primary shape. And the primary shape is going to be the one that dominates your composition. It's the main one. And that's going to be this central one here. And then you can use that shape and other shapes to sort of lead the eye around the composition. So I'm going to have this, the character up in the left there. That's going to be the number 2 shape. Where it's like, it's not as important as the number 1 shape. It's off center. It's over here. It's overlapping a little bit. But hopefully it starts to lead the eye around here. And then if we get the 3rd shape over here like this, we want to try to continue the flow of leading the eye through the illustration like that. And then the bottom shape here could even be something a little bit like this. So you see already, if you have this, just the fact that all of the different shapings are about the same size.
Corbin says thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, so just the fact that all the different shapes are about the same size makes this composition a little more stale, a little more static. When you get one that's larger, and then you get a secondary shape, and then even the accents are sort of like flowing in the energy of that primary shape, that helps make the composition a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more appealing to the eye. So I guess that's probably like the good lesson to extract from this is, even if you're doing something cryptic like this, you can try to make sure that the composition, instead of having everything be like a sort of same size and juxtaposition, try to get some size variation, choose a primary element, choose a secondary element, recognize that the other things are accents, and then try to arrange them in a dynamic way that leads the eye through the piece. So that would be what I would advise there, and let's move on to, oh, I'm embarrassed at the swimming pool.
Oh, you know what? I think this artist has entered a couple, dude.
I think so.
I think it's the same character.
But I can do some real quick, like, what would we do different on this character?
You know what? By the way, I think I saw this character in Rouge's outfit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this person had this outfit on under Rouge. I think we're seeing a costume change.
Is this the same character that was wearing Rouge's outfit? Oh, I think we caught him. He's wearing Rouge's outfit. Now he's wearing a swam suit.
Swam.
It's okay, though, because nowhere did I say, like, 1 entry per person. People can enter more than once. It's fine. I just want to make sure that if more people enter more than once, I want to make sure everyone gets at least one of their submissions looked at.
That's very nice of you.
But I'm not going to be over here like, you've already had a drawing. You've had enough. You're cut off. Blah, blah.
Hey,
It's fine.
You got a robot. Do you want me to save your robot for later? It's in Telegram.
I don't care about spam right now. Although it is important to me and into my life, and I like to pay attention to spam messages.
Do you want me to make fun of him or let you do it?
No, I'll make fun of him later.
Okay, good.
So, I'm going to say,
This character seems embarrassed.
just like before we had Foxy being like dominant, big, in command, I'm going to say with this one, oops, that's not the eraser color. With this one, we want it to be the opposite. I want to actually leverage their background and camera angle to make them feel a little more embarrassed, a little more minimized. So this is a good example. I'm going to be probably doing this like almost totally from scratch here. So first of all, I promised I would talk about the rule of thirds, and then I didn't. So let's do that now. Now the rule of thirds generally says if you just divide an illustration into thirds both ways, these little points typically, and again, it's a guideline, it's not always the case, but generally you want these off-center points to be where you have areas of extra interest.
Who told you about the rule of thirds? Because I don't remember that in college.
I don't know. I think I read about it in like a compositional book. Like it might have been Scott McCloud. I don't remember. It's been so long. Yeah.
Ah.
But the reason for that is because if you kind of have a composition like this where it's just like one item exactly in the center, there's not much flow to the illustration. There's nowhere for the eye to go. So it's just a little more static. And that's not always a bad thing. Like if you get like some royal family portraits, you might want the eye just to settle there, feel nice and stable. So if you want something to be very stable, very centered, very zen, sometimes you do want to just have it be, bam, it's in the center, nothing else, that's it. But generally speaking, the inclination of most artists is to do that without really thinking about it. And you don't want to put something very center and have it be static accidentally. So the rule of thirds is there to try to remind artists like, hey, maybe have the focus be off-center. Especially if it's something like let's say you've got like a landscape or something here.
4 steppers 7 is 6.
Maybe you want to have like a focus up here, like oh, like the sun or a moon could be a cool focus. You got the landscape, and then like in the foreground you'll have a guy down here like, oh, I'm staring into the distance with a stern expression on my face. And you see here we have like this is over here in the top right rule of thirds. He's over there in the bottom left rule of thirds. And just the fact that you are putting key elements in those hot spots, that just helps make sure that the eye has a little bit of motion through the image. It can go from one thing to the other thing and back. So it just helps images stay a little more asymmetrical, a little bit off balance, a little bit more dynamic. So that said, let's think about using the rule of thirds here with this guy, and let's think about how do you arrange things to get the maximum psychological impact. Well, I feel like if we're gonna like take some liberties with this, I think we want the camera to be up above the character. I'm gonna put him down here, lower left one, because this way, why lower left? Why not upper left? Why not upper right? Well, if we want him to feel sort of small or isolated or vulnerable or alone, then if there's all of this composition above him, all of this space above him, then it feels like there's so much pressing down on this character, and he's isolated and small, and he's lower down than everything. So that just really accentuates what we're trying to convey psychologically. And you can see I'm roughly just putting some perspective lines in here to get a sense of the fact that we are at a bird's eye view. We're way up here above the character. He's way down here. Excuse me. So the fact that we are looking down on the character makes him feel smaller, a little more vulnerable, a little like, you know, he's not like a giant. He's not a titan. He's not towering over us and intimidating us. And so I'd have him down there, and what was this pool background like? It's got like a cool angled wall. Everything is tile.
I have an idea.
What's your idea?
Could you show them, because it's a photo, could you show them a couple little ways to make a photo and a color layer look a little more consistent, so it doesn't just look pasted on there?
How to make a photo look more consistent?
Like, no, I mean, you add some shading or color layers so that it doesn't look like we just drew on top of a photo. It's a Clip Art Studio trick, not just composition.
I feel like that's more of like a texturing topic, and I'm focusing more on like the composition right now. But I could talk about that as like, in terms of like putting things on top of a photo, how to make it stand out. Although that's one of the things that's working nice with this, is the photo is so different from the character. It almost has like a, excuse me, what's that show? Amazing House of Gumball style?
Amazing World of Gumball?
Yeah, it sort of has a mixed media look. Now, if you're trying to make things look like one consistent style where the character and the world like really belong together, then you'd probably want to like, you know, trace over this background, do something to like push it back a bit more. But if you're going for like just sort of like a surreal mixed media look, then you don't have to worry too much about that. Excuse me. Voice levels 62% dropping.
Switch to electric guitar, go.
But it's okay, we're still alive and kicking. So I think you get the impression here is, if I wanted to have the composition really working to emphasize the psychology of this scene, I'd put the camera up, I'd put him in one of the rule of thirds hotspots on the scene, and then I'd have the camera be looking down on him. And then you can see already that this starts to feel a little more cinematic. It's the whole composition is helping to tell the story, not necessarily just, here's the character, I am drawing how he feels. Now we see, here's the character, and here's how they feel, and part of the way they feel you can infer from the environment, the composition, the camera angle, the camera placement. So all of those things are working to help tell the emotional story. And then, of course, you still use your cartooning skills to put a sad look on their face, and then it works even better because the whole composition is joining in to help tell the tale here. All right. What's number... there's nothing for 15. Number 14. So we're going to go through... I think this is another piece by the incomparable Raubritta. Yeah, I recognize that he designed that gun. That's a cool-looking gun. And there's Stiletto using that cool-looking gun. Oh, man.
I should tell you, he tried to figure out the different districts based on buildings.
Oh, cool.
He got really particular about how your city looked.
Yeah. I will say some of the districts I actually am trying to be a little more consistent, but a lot of them have just been like, oh, I'm drawing a background shot with buildings. The more I go, the more I try to like, at least what I want to do is have the district towers be a little more consistent. Like we've seen the Margate District Tower, I think in the background of the Prelude Collection 2 cover, possibly in the background of a Prelude comic or two. So whenever I draw the Margate District, if the district central tower is in the shot, I got to be like, okay, I've drawn this before. I need it to look correct. But I don't want to mislead people and tell them like, oh, when I draw the city, I have a map of every single building, and every single building has a reference, and they're all consistent. And
that's what they're afraid of with your lore book, is that you're actually going to sit there and do that for like a year.
Well, there's a lot of lore to cover, but I will say there's certain things that I do not keep consistency on in Dreamkeepers. Like, so just in case you're trying to like do stuff, follow in my footsteps, be like, what would I be wasting my time to try to like piece together meticulously? One example would be, I try to keep the orphanage, the Grun's orphanage, pretty consistent. But for example, I never keep track of the number of steps in the staircases. If there's a staircase going up to the bunk and down, every time I draw it, it's likely a different number of steps. So if you were keeping close track, that would be something where David is not keeping meticulous consistency. Bobby's spots, yeah, I don't like map his spots out perfectly. One shot he might have like, 4 spots on his forearm, another one it might be 5 spots. And also, when I do like massive sprawling cityscapes, I don't track every single building in juxtaposition to every other single building, especially when they're drawn small. Like I said, obviously the main Sabaton Tower, I gotta get that right. I'm starting to get better in trying to make sure the district towers and topography is a little more consistent. But I don't necessarily track the floor plan and the architecture of every single building everywhere. And that, so, and I'm not even saying like, I've fucked up, I have sinned, I've committed crimes. Mainly, I don't want people to necessarily exhaust their time trying to pretend like I'm perfect, because I'm not. And also, it's sort of like, I want to try to bring as much of the story to life as I can, and that does require a certain degree of consistency. But there's also like some categories of things where it's like, you know what, I could burn like thousands of hours mapping out every building in the city, and it would be I'd be like 3 graphic novels behind, and it's just not worth it's not worth it. It would be too much of a hit to the story.
And no one would care.
Yeah. It's like, how much value would that consistency bring to the story versus how much value would that take from the story?
Okay, but let's get serious about pose here. I'm looking at that back stiletto's wing, and I like how you get to see the gun detail and the color overlapping well, but the whole shape of the wing is making me wonder if you could do something with that.
So Liz, you're wondering if we can look at Stiletto's pose.
The wing in particular, that red one.
Yeah. I think we will. And this is another example of an illustration where I'm gonna kind of look at this and just have to play with it because there's so much that's already going right. Nice composition. Stiletto's up there in the upper left. It's the rule of thirds principle with a little bit of exaggeration to really even draw the eye more across that panoramic vista. We've got the city out here serving as like a nice automatic dynamic like curve drawing the eye through the scene. Excuse me. Nice horizon line over here. Beautiful mountainscape. And then we have the clouds up here sort of moving in the opposite curving direction. And that really helps bring the eye right to this sight line where Stiletto's aiming at somebody. So there's big picture compositional things here that are really cool. Also, the atmospheric perspective is working nice. There's never any question about where the most value contrast is or what the focus of the scene is. The most value contrast is right up here with the primary focal character. And although we have all of this like lush, nuanced color down below, it's kind of pushed back into pastels, and that means that we get all of this like visual richness, but we don't have to worry about having the visuals be cluttered. So this is one of the things I really like, is when you have lots and lots of detail in an image, but it still has a clear composition because you control the value contrast to make sure that we know what the focal point is. And that even kind of goes back into the primary, secondary accent shaping characteristics. This is actually a great counterexample of where the primary up here is actually smaller in size than all of the secondary and like accent stuff. And sometimes you don't need the primary focus to be the biggest thing spatially. Sometimes you can have it be, in exactly this case is a great example, it's one of the smallest things, but it has the most detailed, high contrast visuals. So it can be the value contrast that often dictates what is the primary focus of a scene. So yeah, tons of stuff going right in this. Really fun. I also like the feathers kind of swooping forward, giving a sense of the wind coming off the side of this tower. But I guess let's go and try to think, what would we do differently with this pose if we were going to do something differently with it? And I don't even really have any problems with this. I think you look at it at a glance, I think it works. But Stiletto has such a weird body type. In case you don't know, she's got like...
It's impossible.
She's like a bird. She's got like the bird tail, and then like the legs have the backward jointed knees on it.
Explain to them it's a secretary bird, but you slapped arms on it.
Yeah, it's basically like a secretary bird, but we put arms on it so she could hold guns and point the finger at people.
Yeah.
So when you have something, especially like, it's not plantigrade legs, and it's not even digitigrade legs. They're these backward bird legs. Rumor has them too. And that's one of the things I like about Dreamkeepers is like, well, there can be so much variety with the physiognomy of the characters. But that said, if I was going to take this bird and have it perched on this structure like this, how would I do it? So I'm just going to have to sort of like sketch on this from scratch and see if I can figure out how she would balance and hold a gun, and if it would be different from this or not. Might wind up being the same, but this is sort of an exploration for me. So her primary mass is going to be sort of clustered in the upper body shoulders region. How could we get those legs supporting the... I want to try to figure out how she would be getting her mass above these points of connection as good as possible. Because if her mass is like out here, that means she's going to have to be expending a lot of strained muscle to maintain that position, which she probably could. She's strong enough. But if she was chilling up there for longer than like 30 seconds, that would, especially if the muscles are straining, that's going to make aiming a lot more difficult. And this looks like a long-range weapon, so precision aiming would be really helpful. So, and this is sort of some of the fun, like real-time problem solving that you can run into when you're trying to do like a cartoony series, but you're also trying to have it be, quote-unquote realistic, is how would you have a bird with backwards jointed knees supporting itself on a ladder to get a stable shot with a sniper rifle. Most cinematography and film directors, they don't have to think about stuff like this, but this is part of what makes just a straight up fantasy thing be really fun. All right. If I was, and this is one of the things I try to think through, like if I was this character, what would I do? I think I'd try to get lighter lines first of all, so I can see what I'm doing here, because this is actually this is a really interesting challenge. I think I'd put my back against the tower, for starters. And that would allow me to sort of put my wings against it and hopefully minimize the amount that wind would be kicking me up. Now, if my back is against the tower, that'll also help me brace, basically bracing like the stock of the gun against my shoulder, which goes against the tower. Excuse me, my voice is also going in real time here as I'm drawing. And I'm not getting like the gun exactly accurate to the ref, but I'm just sort of like putting in a placeholder popsicle stick for now.
Our wings are a little red flag.
Wings are a little red flag, yeah.
She never skips leg day.
Also, I think if, generally speaking, because that's another issue, is like you've got a rifle with a scope that's pretty low slung across the body, and she's got like this tall bird neck. So if you got a rifle coming off the stock in your shoulder, which obviously would be desirable, you don't want to have the stock like resting on your throat or something, then how do you get your head down in the range to comfortably look in that scope? And I think that, I imagine she'd actually have to kind of tilt her head to get one of the eyes looking into the scope a little bit more like this. So I think she'd have to crane her neck forward and then have the head tilted. And she's got the wings kind of up against the tower like this. Like realistically, maybe that would be the best way to take the shot, but I love how the wings are furling out in the original illustration. So I'm just going to try to draw my little quote-unquote, what would it be like realistically? And then that might be a good takeaway to be like, yeah, here's the realistic version, but maybe the original version is more cinematographic and dramatic. And sometimes you go for some dramatic effect over realism. And I think this might be one of those cases, but I just want to finish the realism experiment because my brain is cooking on that topic. So yeah, we got the gun, the shoulder, the back braced against the building here. Head is tucked down onto the scope. And then we got I think we'd have the body angling forward so that there's some room for these legs to come back. The back knees could be resting against the building, and then we have them coming down and grabbing the joints here. Yeah, so I think if I was doing a quote-unquote realistic, I would say this might be the most comfortable pose for Stiletto to achieve if she had to just like hang out up here on this ladder.
No, with the wing I like to pretend there's wind.
Yeah. Oh, I think the wing does a really great job of illustrating the wind. So I'm going to say this is how I would consider it if it was realistic. The feet are here, her center of body is above her feet, she's leaning back against the tower for stabilization and extra support, and the wings are almost like flat along the tower there so that it provides maximum stability. However, I'm going to say this is an example where I like the original more. Is my version like more realistic in terms of like providing a more stable situation for the character to fire from? Yeah, I guess you could say mine is a more realistic cartoon bird with a rifle. But the original, I like how she's leaning forward. That posture conveys aggression, and I love the big red of her wings serving as a backdrop and like flowing forward, so really illustrating how windy and unstable and interesting it is up there. So this is an example where if I was gonna give advice to the artist, I would actually say I like your original pose more. I like playing the what would it realistically be game, and sometimes that can be useful. But I think, especially when you're doing entertainment, and especially if it's something like a cartoony comic, sometimes dramatic effect trumps realism, and I think this illustration is a great example of that. Really like this illustration. Strong work by Rob Ritter. And now my voice is giving out on me, but I was told that there was a couple more entries on the original post, so I'm going to go scroll my Twitter and try to find those. And just talk about them briefly before we conclude. Before we conclude here today. There we go. Here's the post on Twitter. No, that's not the post on Twitter. That's me announcing the stream is going live. I fooled myself. Bait and switch. Maybe next year I should make a big graphic that says submit here so I can find... Yeah, so I can find my own submissions easier. Dun, 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 dun. Scrolling Twitter. Thanks, guys, for being patient with me. Just got to find where the submissions are over here. Do, 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 do. Actually, I wonder if I link to submissions on the CouchCon page, because I see a CouchCon notice on my Twitter, so maybe I could get to it faster there. Oh, no, I found it on Twitter first. There we go. Reply here. Now I'm looking through the replies. Did those... No, here's one. That is new. Oh, this is cool. Let me save this in the Redline Clinic folder. And let me see if there's any other ones that I didn't see. Show replies, including those that contain offensive content. Thank you, Twitter. I'm good. Alright, I think the only new one I see is just that one, but that is a new one. So we got one more Redline Clinic on the plate. Let me just open that file up real quick. Where is it? Say what?
You ever think of redlining your old works?
Ah, that'd be fun sometime. All right, and this is I have it in front of me, so I should be able to look right now. Submission from Mock MKW on Twitter. All right, let's paste the line art in here, and they're saying a quickly put together multi-layered cityscape. Cool. Yeah, let's take a look at this, talk about it a little bit, and see if we can do some redlining or extract any fun lessons out of it. Whoa, no. There we go. Oh, cool. I like the character in the upper right for scale. And this is another good example of that rule of thirds coming into effect here. Because even in a composition like this, let's see if anything happens to fall on these like thirds lines, roughly. Pretty close. This one is up here. This guy's down here. So I'm finding my eye kind of drawing through. Then this curve and these kind of like take the eye back through here. So that's one thing I'm going to say I really like is I like the organic shapes and the curvature that you have in this. Especially because you have these organic shapes curving through here. So you have these shapes, these like big curving shapes. And then as it goes back in space, you have the same shape, but it's on a smaller scale. And that's a really good way to help show depth and dimension. And so you have perspective in there, but you don't necessarily have to have like completely rigid lines on everything. You don't have to have everything be right angles. And having like the same shape, but having it scale down as it goes back in space is a really nice way of indicating perspective. I like how these columns are sort of like, they have a bit of a tilt. They're also organic. So this is, there's some really fun stuff going on in the cityscape. Especially, you can tell that this is sort of like a quick draft. You know, you didn't spend like 10 trillion hours making every single window pane like excruciatingly detailed. But especially for like a relatively quick concept piece, this is really nice. I think my favorite thing is I like these flowing shapes. I like these flowing shapes that starts at the top, this big open space, and it kind of funnels you into the image. It funnels you into the image, and that's why this like lower, you can tell the horizon line is down here, because this is where everything is kind of like going down to. So again, even though we don't have a lot of rectilinear indicators, you can tell that the horizon, roughly where the horizon line is, and you can tell that there is perspective at work. So this big river shape up here pulls us into the scene nicely. That's where most of the visual space is because the horizon line is lower. And then we get like a cluster of detail down here. So a lot of stuff going very right in this. Oh, I drew right on the picture. I'm a dum-dum. Back to the source. Edit transform. Adjust position canvas. Haha. Fixed. So that's what I like about it. A lot of stuff going really good here. What would I change? What would I redline about this? I love this dude being like, whoa! He's like, this place is cool. Whoa! I mean, I guess if I was gonna redline this, I could say, oh, let's add more detail and like sharpen up some of these things. But like, that's what you would do anyways as you move it closer to completion or tighten details up. So I feel like that's not really helpful critique for this stage of the illustration, because this is just like an earlier stage of an illustration, so of course it's not going to be like super tight and like polished with tiny details and like shading and whatever. I like these little like escalator things. Yeah, so I just like this composition. I like this composition a lot. I don't think I'd really mess with it. I think if I was going to make some suggestions, and this is more like at the compositional stage too, I would just say maybe add a few more living creatures in here. This guy is perfect as like the closest one to us. It gives us a sense of scale. So maybe if you put another couple dudes like, hey, I'm walking around over here.
Residential housing is built into the infrastructure support.
Residential housing is built into the infrastructure support. That's cool. So yeah, I'd say maybe there's someone looking over the ledge up here. So I'd say have this guy. And you don't have to go nuts and add like 100 people, but add like, 6 or 7 other people scattered throughout there. Maybe if there's like a bird or two flying around up here, and then you can make another couple of birds even smaller over there to show size differentiation. And that's kind of about it. I like this. I think this is really cool. And then I would also say, if you did take this to a finished illustration, one of the things that can help emphasize depth and shaping in a drawing like this is the way light is falling into the picture. Like, I'm just gonna, yeah, in fact, that's probably a good thing to talk about, just as a possibility. Let's add some shadow, multiply layer, now it's all shadowy, darker. And then we could put a layer mask on the shadow layer, and get the airbrush here. And we could say, what if, hello, airbrush. There we go. What if this area is in light? And then that would make this guy in light. And what would have to happen for them to be in light? Let's say the light is coming from up here this direction. So we know sort of like a, maybe it's like morning or afternoon, depending on like, east and west here. But then it'd be hitting the rim of this part of the surface. And then this part under here, this would all be shadow. So we'll leave that alone. And you could sort of trace from this rim to this support, and that's where the light would hit. And then you can trace, it'd be hitting these rims up here. And also can trace from this rim to this cross thing. So it'd be hitting there. So that's one of the things in big picture scenes like this is sort of track, this part would all be getting hit by the light. Sort of track where is the light coming from, and based on what in the scene is intercepting that light, it can really help to make the space very tangible to viewers. Looks like there's something in the background here, and I might be getting some of these shapes wrong, but this is just to sort of illustrate the broad idea that throwing big regions of light into a scene can really help stuff. And then down here we'd have like some light falling, because you can even use an atmospheric layer to sort of show, like, here's some of the light rays coming down. And once you have those light rays,
You know, I really like this one.
thank you. Yeah, once you have those light rays in your mind,
No, I mean their work, not you.
no, that's what I mean. It's like the substrate work is really good. Once you have those light rays in your mind, then you can sort of see like, okay, this would come down here, and oh, if this is like a gap in it, it'd be hitting this like that, and then maybe we have like an oval down here from where this would be coming. So this is obviously very rough, but you can sort of get the sense of what I'm talking about with leveraging that kind of the direction and the angle of the light to really emphasize the amazing depth and space that you've already conveyed in the image. So you've already conveyed great depth, great space, it's cool, nice composition, and sometimes this is one of the elements that artists overlook, which is lighting. And one of the best ways to help capture depth and space in an image is the way the light is falling across the image differently based on that depth and space. So I think I'd say I love this composition. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's really cool. Cool cityscape design.
Leading the eye.
Yeah, definitely lots of dynamic motion leading the eye through the image. And I just sort of use this as a springboard to talk about dynamic lighting in a scene. And I mean, you don't have to go this route, obviously. It could be a night scene. You could have most of the lighting be coming from like windows in these buildings. There's all kinds of stuff you could do, which is it's one of the things that makes creating art so fun. It's like limitless possibilities. It's whatever you can imagine. But one thing I cannot imagine is continuing to talk comfortably. And we have successfully gotten through all of our Redline submissions.
Did you do it?
We did it.
You did. I'm surprised by you.
We did it. Yeah, we did this and this and that and this, and we did some of this, a little bit of that.
Because your voice went out.
Yeah, I would have stopped now anyways. Hooray. But you guys, thank you for hanging out with us, letting us yammer on about art. It's been really fun. I hope this was entertaining and maybe helpful or educational for anyone out there watching. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for making our CouchCon really engaging and fun, and thank you guys for picking up some merch from the stores if you see things that you like. And we will be back tonight.
Did you say this was really fun to be a part of?
Oh, well, thank you. We'll definitely do it again next year. I'm really loving the Redline clinics, and you guys always bring cool stuff. So we're going to be having one more CouchCon stream tonight, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. I don't know if it'll go all the way to 9, but we'll start it off at 7. We will be showing all the Vivid Author Secret Santa pieces, and I think we'll have some other Vivid authors around to say hey. So come along. If you have any questions for them or for us, feel free to bring them. It'll be kind of more of a casual, fun, chill out. So see you guys tonight. Have a good one. Stream ends in 5, 4, 3, 2, and a 1.